I did go through imposter syndrome when I took one of my hobbies and wanted to turn it into a business, and that was, wait for it, human beatboxing.
Human beatboxing. Can we get an example of this? Today we're joined by Sam Osborne and David Graf. Sam is the neurosurgeon of Self Worth, a global keynote speaker and coach who helps leaders break through fear, doubt, and imposter syndrome. David is an attorney, educator, and founder of Moeller Graf PC, where he spent more than 20 years guiding leaders through high-stakes, high-conflict situations. Together, they bring a rare mix of inner transformation and real-world leadership insight. We had so much fun in this episode. There's some beatboxing. We talked about cleaning porta potties. We talked about conflict resolution. We had some amazing conversations about meditation and mindfulness. You will want to make sure you listen to the full episode. So let's do this. Welcome to this week's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast, where I, Angela Gill Nelms, sit down with industry experts for candid conversations about the challenges and joys of leadership. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now let's dive in and get ready to scale your company, grow your brand, and unlock your full badass potential. So, okay, why don't we kick off? And I know both of you are authors as well. I have your books, which are both great and quite different in and of themselves. And so it also made me think about, how did the two of you meet each other? A little bit about your history, but since we have two of you, I want the listeners to see our guests as actual real humans and not just an author or a badass leader. So what I would love for you to do is tell us who you are as a human being. And Sam, why don't you kick us off?
Well, as a human being, pretty unconventional, high-spirited guy. I'm a former school teacher, actually.
Ooh, what grade and what did you teach? I have taught
every grade there is to teach, from kindergarten to adults in Australia, Los Angeles, and a little bit in Germany. And now I'm speaking, and I love speaking about self-worth, which is what we'll talk a bit more about today, hopefully. And Dave and I met through an association that I used to be affiliated with back in Australia. He spoke to our association on Burnout, and we clicked, didn't we, Dave? We hit it off, and we started having conversations. Like, I was helping to prep Dave to speak for our organization, and it was very clear from the get-go, Dave, wasn't it, that we were like, we could keep talking all day, because we really clicked on, I guess you could say, human potential and mindset. And so it made sense to keep talking, and we built this relationship. And then we thought, hey, why don't we do a presentation for somebody? And we did, for an organization here in the US. And I think we crushed it, didn't we, Dave?
We did. Yeah, it was about happiness and burnout, resilience, things that we like to talk about. Yeah, it was really fun. Sam is a 400-watt bulb in a 60-watt world.
Oh, I love that description. That is amazing. That is amazing. And so, Sam, you're calling in to the show today from California, correct?
Yeah, from LA.
Okay. How long have you lived in the US?
This is the second time I've been living here. I've been here now 5 months this time around. But I was back in Melbourne, Australia for about 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was living in LA from 2016 to 2022.
Amazing. Okay. Yeah. And now, David, you do not live in California. Tell us about you.
No. I live in Colorado. I grew up in Connecticut. I moved here to pursue a career in rock and ice climbing before I realized there wasn't really such a thing. Been here 30 years, practicing lawyer for 30 years, married for 25 years, meditating
Congratulations.
consistently for 25 years. Thank you. And I don't know if those two are related.
I would suspect that they probably are related. They probably also tied to why you're so passionate about the burnout and that piece of the work that you do.
Yeah. Yeah, I burned out spectacularly at the age of 29, and I thought the problem was with me. And to some extent, or to a large extent, it was, but I was trying to solve a problem doing all of the wrong things. But things that I thought that I had been taught would solve the problem of how I wanted to feel. And then when I got everything that I wanted and nothing changed, I was absolutely gutted. And that kind of started the inquiry on how to feel what I wanted to feel without trying to rearrange all my life circumstances. It took me a while. It took me quite a while.
Well, and I think one of the things, so you said that happened to you at 29, and you're maybe a couple years older than 29 now. I think one of the things I hear from people is especially I also am a professor as well. So I teach a master's class right now at Emory University. Now it's in global therapeutics market, not in leadership or anything like that. But when I work with these students coming out of Georgia Tech and Emory, and they're graduating, or they're in a master's program preparing to graduate, they think just like I thought when I was younger, whatever that first job you make, or whatever that next, whatever you decide to get your master, or whatever, it is the end all be all for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And I find myself that most of the individuals I know who have the least level of satisfaction in their career are the ones who have accepted that as if it is reality and stayed within it and not explored what other possibilities could happen.
Angela, I think I'm the epitome of someone who said I'm not going to have a job more than 6 months in a row. And so I know I said before I'm a former school teacher. In amongst a 15-year career of doing that, I was an entertainer, a DJ, a kitchen and bathroom tiler, and a speaker, and a coach. So I like to try different things, and I made all of my hobbies basically into some sort of income generation thing. So that's, I think, is a great way to live. It's like take something you really love and package that as a viable business option, and then go find people that would value that or meet some value through channeling what you love doing into a product or service. And I think it's also an interesting leadership strategy to say, what's my highest value in the activities that I love to do most, that light me up, that I do even if I wasn't getting paid for it, but then build a business around it so you do, so that your vocation becomes your vacation.
I like that phrase, Sam. I think you and I absolutely would get along really well, both super high energy. And also, I just recently wrote a blog about the whole having a whole bunch of different hobbies, and about, well, of course, in order to be a master of something, you need 10,000 hours, and that's what the research shows. However, I also have a gazillion hobbies, many of which I've also turned into small side businesses along the way: blacksmithing, wood turning, beekeeping, podcasting, coaching, leadership. And I think it brings me great joy to have that level of diversity in my life. And okay, a teaser, we are going to talk about imposter syndrome. And while this wasn't front loaded at the beginning of our conversation, I think we should maybe dig into that, because I think, for example, here's one thing. Nothing happens by just luck, I don't think. I think things happen for a reason. And I'm interviewing you today. We're going to talk about self-worth and imposter syndrome. And first off, I had someone once tell me, and it was a female leader, she said that she'd never felt imposter syndrome in her life. And I said, I think you're lying to me, because I've never met a human being who's not felt imposter syndrome, and myself included. And the reason I'm mentioning that is I'm speaking at a conference in Philadelphia on Tuesday of this week on a topic that I'm like, I don't know. Am I qualified to talk enough on this topic or not? Right? Am I going to get up there and they're going to realize she is not the expert that all of these things have been in my mind for the past week. And of course, my friends like, okay, Angela, you're being silly. This is ridiculous, right? But even myself, where I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of talks, a lot of presentations, I also fall into that trap of imposter syndrome at some point. So can we dig in and maybe start with that and hear about why that became a big focus? And of course, I mean, enough of a focus that you wrote a whole book about it. So
Yeah, okay. Well, I did go through imposter syndrome when I took one of my hobbies and wanted to turn it into a business, and that was, wait for it, human beatboxing.
human beatboxing.
So since
Can
about
we
the age
can we
of
get an
14,
example of this?
oh yeah, so since about the age of 14, I fell in love with, well, actually earlier, I fell in love with sound effects from like Star Wars and Jonesy from the Police Academy, that character who could make all those sound effects.
Yeah.
And so I started to imitate music because I couldn't afford a synthesizer. And so I listened to music enough and I realized there's a kick drum, which is like a letter D sound, like a doo. Can you hear that? Like doo. And then
Yep.
you have a snare drum, which is like saying diff, like diff, diff. And then a closed hi-hat is like saying tiff, like Tiffany. So you go like tiff, tiff, tiff. And then if you put all three of them together, you get something you get something along the lines of, I'm laughing now. I've done it so
This
much.
is amazing. This is so amazing.
No,
I'm
wait,
like
wait.
trying not to have tears of laughter right now.
All right, here we go. So I did that for
That's
entertaining
badass, by the way, just
young,
saying.
yeah. So I went into schools and they put me with at-risk teenagers who had fallen through the system, and I said, here, I entertained them a bit and said, here's my unique talent. What's yours? Build a career and a business around that. So it really lifted them up. Plus it had the entertainment hook. Now, prior to starting that business and actually getting paid for it, I was feeling imposter syndrome because I was comparing myself to someone I perceived was a better beatboxer, a better entertainer, and as a result didn't feel ready. So I was getting praise from people saying, you've got the ability to do it. I knew I had the ability to do it, but because I was comparing myself to someone else, I hesitated and procrastinated and didn't feel I was ready. And so
You
I
were
tried.
comparing your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 10. And we talked a
Well,
lot about that on
I had
several
kind
episodes.
of. I was
Maybe you were chapter
comparing
3.
myself to a fantasy that I had created about this person. So I called them and I became friends with them, and they said, what are you talking about? You're so good at it. Go ahead and do it. Now I went ahead and did some, and I still felt that people were going to ridicule me. Even though I was now getting paid for it, I still felt like one. And it made me get to the point of going, stop making this about yourself and make it entirely about your audience and show them who you really are. And as a result, I talked about self-doubt, and people started to book me more for that than the beatboxing, right? And you said before about how there's nothing random in life. And I believe that there's a synchronistic universe going on. It's like we each get this path and the challenges that we are required to solve and share with the world. So I say thank you to the fact that I went through imposter syndrome.
Well, and I love how you adjusted that and said that you were comparing yourself to a fantasy, and we as humans are known for looking at somebody else's life and thinking and making up stories about what we think it is, and where we think they're better, smarter, luckier, have other opportunities, happier, more peaceful, all of these things than what we are, when in reality we have no idea what somebody else has gone through, what their life is, what their struggles happen to be, what their fears are, none of those things, which is the reason I love this podcast is I get to talk to humans as humans, and I can see your book and read your book, but to actually, first off, to hear the beatboxing was the highlight of a very long time.
I'm trying to teach Dave to do it as well for our act, but
Right?
I'm working on
he's
it.
gonna rap. He's gonna rap about legalities.
I can write. Yeah, no, I don't rap. I can speak and rhyme. I mean, I have an uncanny ability just because I live in words to rhyme things, but I don't usually do it on demand. But
Okay,
yeah,
so when you do it though, when you guys get your act together and you have your beatbox and you're rapping about legalities and meditation and self-worth, I just tag us so that we can spread it out to the universe because I cannot wait to see this.
Well, I don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll try our best. Leave it with us.
we'll do it. We can do it.
So, David, when you hear this from your perspective and from all of your background, and you just heard what Sam said, how did that resonate with you?
Well, I've done the career path completely the opposite, right? I was determined to be a doctor, and I took an abrupt right turn and became a lawyer. And instead of trying to do something that I loved, I stuck with it. I actually walked away at 29, and then I realized what a great opportunity it was, and I came back with...
You were a lawyer at 29? Is that...
A partner in a law firm at 29 that I walked away
And what
from.
type of law?
Back then I was doing buying and selling of office buildings and shopping centers, so commercial real estate, essentially.
Okay.
And I was just drying up on the vine. There was not a lot of human interaction, and I was negotiating, big deals that were sometimes multi-year deals, and I just felt like I was isolated. And on paper, I had everything that I wanted, but I was absolutely miserable. And so I realized then that all the things that I thought that I wanted and that I had just spent the last 11 years trying to get, or 14 years, I suppose, were not going to produce the feeling that I thought they would. And when I left the law, I had a complete perspective shift. And I came back, started at the bottom, but I had this gratitude that has remained with me since about 2000. And so I find satisfaction in the grind, even though it's not what I would choose to do. If I could do anything in the world, I would be speaking and coaching full time. But I'm still working 50 hours a week as an attorney in a firm, and I've never been happier. And so I do sometimes have imposter syndrome, although I'm, I suppose, at the top of my career, and I don't have doubts about my ability. But conscientious people always see the flaws. They see their cracks. They see their flaws, their misstatements on stage that others don't notice. And we obsess over those. And I think that's what makes you good at what you do. And if you didn't see the flaws and you didn't have that humility to realize that all of us are finding our way through this life as best we can, either you're lying when you say you don't have imposter syndrome, or you're just missing that inner critic that can be helpful to a point. And the problem for most of us, we let it continue to criticize way beyond its usefulness to us.
Yeah, so in my day job, I run a commercialization program out of Georgia Tech and Emory. We're commercializing medical technologies. I work with an elite group of teams that we strongly believe we can get their research out of the university to the patient as quickly as possible. And so I work with a lot of unique personalities. And I will say, there's a big difference between having zero humility because you think you know everything and you think everyone else is stupid, and imposter syndrome. I think that what you were just saying, that little bit of inner critic, that little bit of humility, that little bit of also wanting to do your best in the things that you do is a healthy piece of that. So how do you harness those traits that are really valuable, but keep them in check so you still have a healthy self-worth and you don't spiral like I was a couple of weeks ago. I literally put my slide deck down to like almost the last minute. I mean, they were emailing me, Angela, your slides were due a month ago. Where are your slides? And I'm not a procrastinator, right? But it was very much that. So how do you harness those things that make us great human beings and have those skills, but also allow them to not spiral into something that's detrimental to you and to your team? Because I want to talk about how this touches on your ability to lead as well.
Yeah, I have my answer. I know Sam may have a different answer. I mean, part of it is awareness, right? And I found that I had gone on autopilot and still go on and off autopilot professionally, where you're going through the motions and you're not checking in to see what you're feeling, right? I grew up the first 25 years of my life, I didn't feel a thing, nothing. I was taught that feelings were for the weak and the indulgent, and they were stupid and frivolous. And I didn't recognize that all of the signs that I was seeing in my life, in my head, in my body, in my relationships were based on me unwilling to check in and see how I feel. And this is kind of a longer conversation, but part of the thing is, you know, people who say that they don't have self-doubt, they may not, but it's a real Zen master level of awareness. And I don't think that most people, I just don't think it's accurate for most people. I do believe that it's built into a conscientious person. But for me, the short term, there's a workaround. Every time we talk about something, Sam and I anyway, we try to give an immediate fix, an intermediate fix, and a destination that might take some time. And the immediate fix for me is to do all of the things that I know that the person that I want to be is doing. And when I do that, I find that self-doubt will still be there to keep me aware, but I don't indulge in it. And it's
what
kind
are
of
some
like
examples? Can you
diet,
list some concrete?
Sure. Diet,
Yeah.
exercise. I write a card to my mother who's in a rehab facility every day. I said I would do that for the rest of her life. Little things that the person that I want to be would do. And when I do that, I have a conscious belief of success. And that is formed based on my actions. And that feeds my subconscious mind, where I don't have a bump in the road, or someone says, oh, you didn't do that right, or they say that I'm, whatever. And I don't buy into it as readily. And I think a lot of us get busy and we cheap out on doing all of the little things that we need to do to feel like we're successful. And then we have someone criticize us and we believe it. And it's just structurally easy to arrange your life to do things that make you proud to be who you are.
You know, one of the things when you were talking about that, I was thinking that it reminds me of the old adage, fake it till you make it, but it's not that. It is instead looking at, if you want to run a marathon, what is someone who's running a marathon going to do? They're going to buy the right shoes, buy the right clothes. They're slowly going to start running a little bit more. This is actually sensitive. I shouldn't talk about this. I just found out from my fit doctor my running career is over. Let's pick a different sport. Okay, if you want to bike 100 miles, but the point being is that it's not, I think whenever that phrase was fake it till you make it was created, which I just actually hate that phrase, I think that it has this negative connotation. Like you're not actually building the skills, building the muscle memory, building that piece and that in order to drive success. And I believe that's what you were describing.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, I don't like that either. But you become a collection of your habits. And so this idea of faking it till you make it ignores the reality that you have to put in the reps. But when you're putting in the reps, you're 80% of the way to where you want to be in most cases. And it's like take care of the days and the years will follow. It's that type of thing. But it's a great way of controlling what you truly believe below the level of the conscious mind. Our subconscious mind, in my experience, is hugely powerful, and we can have enormous swings based on something we picked up in childhood. And the only way we can inoculate the subconscious mind from having this emotional resonance with negativity or failure or insults is to objectively know that we're on this path. And I think saying that it doesn't bother me is extraordinarily rare in humanity, that it would be true. But if we're taking those steps that we can control easily, right? We all know what they are, we just don't do them. It's just a tremendous advantage in not buying into the inner critic to the point where it becomes counterproductive.
Right, which goes back to where we were starting with the conversation, and also thinking one key thing that you mentioned as well is that ability to have self-awareness throughout the journey. So going back to that, not allowing us to spiral and not allowing that self-awareness to almost be a fake sense of self-awareness, Sam, how would you, in your instance, from your perspective, provide insight into the audience for that?
Clarify your highest values and the activities that link to fulfilling it. If you fulfill your day with activities, like Dave was saying, that are aligned with things that you value most, you're authentic. If you are filling your day with low priority activities that are connected to your lowest values, you're inauthentic and an imposter. And you end up feeling like you're faking something. You feel like you're not in your own shoes. You're like, this is not even me. But the moment you say, what do I value most? I think Dave and I have a similar high value on education, teaching, coaching, and learning for ourselves. When we identify specific activities that we can fill our day with, and we say, when I'm doing those, they fulfill me and they serve the world in a meaningful way, I'm the most authentic and my self-worth is highest. There's no judgment of yourself or others. You don't put others on a pedestal and you don't put yourself in a pit when you are aligned with your highest values and you're doing tangible activities. You say, right, when I'm writing a blog or when I'm coaching or when I'm on a podcast, that's an activity that I can say with logical certainty is connected to my highest values. It lifts my spirits. People say, I want what you're having for breakfast because your energy is highest. And you attract opportunities. It's profound, but it's practical. Get clear with your highest values.
I love that. I love that. And one of the phrases that I love to say, because I started saying this back with my mental wellness podcast, because one of my favorite books is Boundaries by Cloud and Townsend. And in that book, there's a sentence in it, and it says that no is a complete sentence. And I've translated that when I mentor teams and leaders, and even myself right now. I just recently had to say I got asked to be secretary of my beekeeping club. And I said, I'm really honored. I turned it down. I did.
Bees. How could you? Those bees.
Save the honeybee. But I will tell you that because my phrase is everything you say yes to means you're saying no to something else. So you have to choose your yeses wisely. And so when Edward called me and said, would you consider this? I said, I'm really honored that you would call and ask me to do this. I know that you're looking for someone who's responsible and has the skills to be very diligent and that kind of stuff, and I love it. However, I don't have the bandwidth to do it. I would not do it well. And I knew that if I said yes to it, the piece of me, for the piece of my self-worth that says anything worth doing is worth doing well, would lead me to even more burnout because of that. So balancing out those things can become hard. So thinking about that, and this is to both of you, when you're working with individuals, teams, organizations, how do you help them take a step back and, one, look at what their actual values are, not the ones that people put on walls. I hate those, or the back of name badges, or I have several times I've talked about that at a previous company that I will say this. I worked at a company, a very huge medical device company. Katie, you should probably cut that. No, just leave it in. Anyways, we had on our badge, it said on there, speak up was one of the values on the badge. And we at one point laughed because there was a period of time at this organization where if you were to speak up, you were not getting a promotion and you were not doing anything else. So I think one, and I think that can be translated to other areas of our life where we're doing too much of the wrong things that we think look good to the exterior, and they're not authentic of who we are as an individual, team, organization, and a culture. So how, when you're working with those individuals, how do you dig into that to find those nuggets that you kind of use as your North Star, like your lodestar? This is what we're going to. What's that process look like?
Dave,
Sam?
you want to try this one?
Yeah, I mean, working with.
I'm ready, but
I
share
know.
it
No,
around.
Sam has this one. He has this one chambered. Talking with busy attorneys, the thing that, or anyone who's consistently saying yes, I try to remind them that you can have it all, but you can't do it all. And there's a big difference between the two. And I think for many of us, we equate, busy, certainly for me, this was the hardest, and I'm still learning this lesson, but the hardest lesson is to be able to say no. And saying no is not lazy. It's not giving up something. It's trading something of a lower value for something of a higher value. And most of us, when we think about our values, even if you looked at a list and you could read Sam's book and within 20 minutes know your values, at least for this calendar quarter. But this idea that, we fill our attention just as we buy things and we eat things and we drink things, and it's a distraction. And knowing that we can have anything that we want as long as we are selective in where we focus our limited resources. It's huge. And I think a lot of people on the other end of the spectrum, say yes to everything. Well, maybe they should say yes to a lot more things because they're not doing much. But the people that Sam and I work with, they're doing way too much, just way too much. And then there's no clarity, none. And they're wondering why they're burned out and uninspired and not achieving the vision that they have for their life. It's because it's cluttered with crap. Just like their phones are, and the email inbox is. And just stripping away is so helpful. And it seems empty, I think. It was for me when geez, I'm not going to be pressed for production. It feels indulgent, empty. But the emptiness is where you can redesign the rest of your life. And if you never get that, you're always going to be reactive, I think. And you'll never really know what your values are because others will tell you what your values are.
Oh, which that makes me cringe to think about. I will say this, I will say too, is that going back to this idea of having hobbies and having those things that kind of pour back into your life. And when I think about my situation with this beekeeping thing, is that I love beekeeping. It is a fun hobby for me, right? It is, I put that in my category of checking it off as self-care. Spending time with bees is very therapeutic. If I had said yes to taking that role as secretary, I would have converted that self-care into another job. And I have enough jobs already, right? And so by saying no, I protected that area of self-care for myself.
I agree. Sam's just dying for this one.
Yeah, sure.
I know. He is just
I'm
get
still
ready
cut
for the
up
mic
that you
drop.
didn't accept the job at the Bee Association.
I know.
Those little bees. You're sitting there saying, my self-care, blah. What about all those little bees? All right, seriously. If you want to maximize, your productivity, and your plate is full, you can either, give yourself a heart attack trying, or you can delegate or delete. I mean, there's not a lot of options. If you're doing too much, something's got to give. However, there's often the case that a person is demotivated or they're not performing at their highest because they're not truly aligned with it. Their heart's not in it. It's because they don't have a big enough reason why. And I'll ask you, Angela, is there something in your life that you love doing so much that a friend would say, what the heck would you want to do that for? That looks too hard, too much of a challenge, but for you, you're inspired by it. There's probably something, right? If you look at your whole life, you go, I wanted to do that. And my friend said, what would you want to do that? But it lit you up, right?
Right, right. I mean, I would say that is beekeeping. Everyone who hears about it, they
Yeah.
think I've lost my. Or the other thing of beekeeping is I am helping do some bee removals from people's houses,
Yeah.
and it is hard freaking work cutting
But for you,
beehives out of.
you're inspired to do it because it
Yes,
fulfills you on a higher level. Now, many
absolutely.
people they go to people don't go to work to fulfill the company's values. They go to fulfill their own. And if a boss is trying to get someone to work and get more out of them and they're having to micromanage it, it's because they're trying to inject their values into that employee. And the employee's just like, forget it. But if you are a leader and you're trying to get the most out of your people, it's wise to find out what they value on a very deep level and link that to the job description. And really take the time to say, can you see how all of these tasks that you have to do for this job are fulfilling your highest values? And that takes a bit of time, but a leader would be wise to spend that time with the people so that you don't have to micromanage them. They take less sick days and you're going to get more out of them because they're now logically aware. We talked about awareness and the importance before. That person is now aware of how the day-to-day grind is actually fulfilling them on a higher level. You're going to get more out of that person. And I've done this with jobs that I've had to do that were not glamorous, and go, okay, practice what you preach. How is this job of whatever I've got to do actually serving my highest value? And you have to do a few steps to get there. But the criteria for me is that you have a genuine confirmation of authenticity, or a confirmation of like, wow, I didn't see it like that before. And that's where true inspiration comes. You're not faking it. You now have got both your heart and your mind aligned with the task and your highest value, and you're no longer needing to fake, because you've logically linked it to the heart. So that's something that I recommend leaders would be wise to do with their team to get the most out of them, and do it for themselves to get the most out of themselves.
I love this. You know, I talked about this topic with Daniel Steer, who is the co-host of the podcast Make Work Not Suck, which I highly recommend you guys check out. The podcast is amazing, and it has a great name as well. But Make Work Not Suck, they had an episode talking about what people consider to be BS jobs. And when I interviewed him for this podcast, we had a very similar conversation that Sam. I said, I'm pretty confident an excellent leader, if they can tie the value to what any job along the chain at a company, how they're making an actual impact on the customer or on society, on the world. And I believe that's one of the things we talk a lot. And I'm going to ask you guys this next about the difference between a leader and a manager. I believe that's one indication of the difference between a leader and a manager, because a manager is going to say, Sam, you are running the porta potty cleaning thing. You just need to go do your job. And a leader is going to say, by being able to have these porta potties at these jobs, these workers and everyone are able to be more comfortable. You're actually giving them a clean space. To, I would dive into what the value add is that for that job. I use that as an example because one day I was out when I was running and I saw a porta potty cleaner and I thought, I think that's the worst job in the world. And so I had to think about how I would add. But I think that's an example from my perspective of the difference between a leader and a manager. And I want to hear from both of you what you think the difference between those two roles are.
Yeah, I think to Sam's point, and I'm not dodging the question, right? There's the individual's personal values, and then there's the value of what they're adding to the company or to society. And those aren't always the same, right? And I think helping people recognize, like the porta potty cleaner, I was a tree cutter for a long time and did landscaping and built rock walls, and it's kind of hard to dress that up. It's just hard work. And what I found in doing that for a while was that my mental resistance in avoiding what I thought was painful was what was painful. And as I stopped resisting that, or like traveling. I've been traveling back and forth across the country every other week. And it used to be when I traveled, I would be focused on getting there. And, I have to do this and I have to do that. And I have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I have to drive and walk in the dark. And when I took away the self-imposed stress of resistance, it became effortless, right? And so many of us, especially in the law as an example, but in many roles, we have this expectation that things are going to suck because we're negatively biased, and we make them suck when they wouldn't necessarily if we didn't have that innate resistance to it. So to me, that's a game changer. And the question was, how do I love being a porta potty cleaner? Is that right?
Yes. Well, what's the difference between a leader and a manager? One of the things but hey, if you want to tell me how you would love, we could do a whole snippet on that. I'm sure the audience would love it. But as you're talking about that, what I was just thinking about, David, is that what you described to me as well is the difference on a personal note of being a manager of my life or being a leader of my life. And I think a manager is what's on the calendar, like checking this off in a very check-off type thing. Mm-hmm. But a leader having that more, how does this drive the values? How does this drive what I want to accomplish or build for my legacy or something like that? So I think you gave an example that I've never even thought about before, but it's the difference in your own life of having those two different personality traits.
Yeah, my dad was a really tough taskmaster through most of my life, and I went away to college and I came back and he was dying of cancer and I was just getting my career started, and we had a completely different relationship because he was trying to help me manage my life as a youngster and as a teen. And when I came back, he was trying to the management was no longer necessary, and now he was trying to teach me how to live. It was a completely different perspective, and it was striking. And I think it is exactly the difference between a manager and a leader, and just saw that unfold under difficult circumstances. It was the greatest gift I could have had, I think, because he wasn't worried about the basics, tying shoes and doing homework and getting A's. It was more about spirituality and pacing and happiness and gratitude. Completely different conversation. And you're right, when you're not, all of us manage our own lives to varying degrees. Not a lot of us consciously lead ourselves as humans. The corporation of being an individual, the business of life. And I think the difference is the fun, right? Because
absolutely.
A to-do list, an endless. Oh, go ahead. Sam's itching. Sorry.
No, an endless to-do list. I know Sam's like, okay, I'm ready. I know Sam, what you're thinking. You're just like me. You're listening intently and being a very intent listener at the same point.
I'm being a sharer. All right, difference between a leader and someone who doesn't like bees. No, that's not the question.
Right. Or porta
leader
potties.
and a manager. I'm going to say it like this. Because I've been trained by Dr. John DeMartini, who, in my opinion, is the Aristotle of our time and one of the world's foremost leaders in human behavior, been trained by this guy, inspired by his work. So a lot of what I say is verbatim from what I've heard from attending his seminars. He says everybody has a hierarchy of values, a unique blueprint specific set of priorities from most important to least important. Whether you're a leader, a manager, or you clean bathrooms for a living, everyone's got one. So if we are judging a task as less than us, or we are judging a task as above us, it is a reflection of our values. That's all. It just means that if you see a task that's beneath you, it's because it's not you don't see it as serving your highest values. But there is a way to change it so you can see that task and the person doing it is supporting your values, because every individual, every event, every task has an equal amount of challenge and support for your values. And if you take the time to look, you'll dissolve resentment and you'll dissolve admiration or infatuation, so that you can appreciate So I think a leader is someone who understands that, and they can appreciate where everyone is at respective to their hierarchy of values. So there's no judgment of feeling that you're better than others or that others are better than you, but instead you see eye to eye, heart to heart. And that is the difference between a leader and a manager.
Mic drop. I love it. I love it. Okay, going back to the values piece of it. How do you help individuals? And I know that you talk about it in your book. How do you help individuals, though, find the values that are their authentic values and not the values that they think the world thinks that they should have?
This is my favorite question. So, DeMartini has a values determination process on his website, and I'm happy to promote him, drdemartini.com. And he says, if you ask yourself questions, you can determine your values. How do you spend your time? What do you fill your physical space with? What do you spend your money on? What do you like to talk about? How do you like to steer the conversation? What topics? What do you think about? Where are you most organized in life? Where are you most disciplined? What are the activities that you naturally and spontaneously want to do that no one needs to remind you? They all indicate your values. So your life will demonstrate your values. There's a difference between what you value and what you would like to have in your life. Many people, when I say, let's determine your values, they say, I want to be rich. I want to have this. I want to have a better body. I want to have a better relationship. No, they're goals. Values can be perceived in what your life currently demonstrates. And if you take the time to say, oh yeah, I really like reading. I've got lots of books near me. Or I spend time with this guy from Colorado named Dave, and we talk about these kind of topics, and it's because I love that stuff. So the facts don't lie. That's how you determine your values. And then you get really, you hold yourself accountable and say, well, which one's number one? There is always a number one value. Number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, it goes on and on. But if you can nail and pinpoint your top 5, and then even stretch and try and get number 1, and then orchestrate your life around that, you'll find that you'll move towards mastery. That's your area of core competency. It's where your identity is. And you'll thrive rather than survive. You'll appreciate rather than depreciate both yourself and others. So get clear on your values by looking at the facts.
And while I said a minute ago about how I hate the idea of where you see a lot of instances values at a company up on a wall or on a badge or something like that, I have a couple of reasons that I dislike it. One is that oftentimes they're just placated corporate values that are just meant to show to their customers that they're an amazing company and not really what they're living and whatnot. Well, I hate that. The thing that I do love is actually still writing and documenting those so that then when you have a hard time or you have a hard decision or something comes up, you can pause and say, okay, wait, how does this align with, or what do my values say about this decision that I need to make? And use those as part of your guide of what you're looking at. The other reason I hate the idea of just putting them on stone on something is that I also believe that there's value in every year evaluating your values, because we grow as human beings, as teams, organizations, and cultures. And we also have new experiences. And I believe every year you should kind of sit down and say, am I still living up to these values? If not, is it because I'm slacking and sleeping in instead of getting on the Peloton, guilty? Or is it because that value is no longer aligned with the legacy, the mission, or the thing that we're doing, and having that growth opportunity for those?
Yeah, I agree. I think I found in our company we've either outgrown or shifted how we look at the values. We had a value that everyone is important, and we deal with people that are not at their best. Sometimes we're suing these people. But we wanted a vision of treating people as if they mattered, irrespective of how they came into contact with our office, because we believe that heals, right? Treating people as adults with compassion, even if we're fighting them, and I use that term, not fighting them, but adverse to them, can make a huge difference in resolving problems. And sometimes that creates unintended consequences where we spend more time than we have to talk people through their difficult situations. And so we have to look back at that and say, okay, how do we temper the need to produce work for our clients with this ideal that we treat people humanely and compassionately within the time constraints that we have? And so it's like, okay, is there a better way that we could express that value as a more clear sign pointing to who we want to be as a company? And I agree, these are not, and I don't know how often you, Sam, recommend it. Is it quarterly to revisit your values?
In the beginning, I was doing it daily for weeks on end. When I first discovered this, I was like, I really wanted to master this. Then it became every 90 days, every quarter for a few years. And then now definitely every year. It's like a Google Calendar reminder. I look forward to it. We do New Year's resolutions. I look at my values. And over time, they stabilize, and you find what is most dominant. And that reflecting on that, it's like a recognition. Yeah, that's who I am at my core. Because identity revolves around the highest value, not the other way around. So our value is, everyone has a void in their life, the thing that they perceive is missing most, due to upbringing, reincarnation, whatever you want. But everybody thinks that, is aware that there's something that they want to strive for and continue to fulfill. And even though they may never achieve perfection, moving toward it is the fulfillment. So if you can do something, contribute to the world in some way that fulfills that void for others, you'll find mastery and self-worth. So once you've found your void, and that you'll find your value. And be like, yeah, that's actually what I'm all about at my core. When you're there, you're most authentic. That's your authentic self, the essential self. It's actually closest to your soul, so to speak, or your heart. So I recommend people try to identify the dominant value over time, and you'll go, yeah, it's actually that. And that's a very powerful thing to do.
And Katie will do the magic and find the link to the website you mentioned. And so listeners, I really want, seriously, go through and do the exercise, and also the 30-day challenge, right? In this, and then comment in the comments and tell us what I would love to hear a whole bunch of people say what values they thought they had and what values they actually are living and their authentic self. And Dave, you're going to say something. Jump in.
No, I was going to answer your question, which was, how do you know if the values that we espouse to be important to us were, foisted upon us, or if they're real? And I think number one is, from my perspective, recognize that they are subject to change, just as we are as humans. And number two is just to see how they feel, right? And Sam's point is well taken.
Talk more about that.
Well,
Talk more about that. How do you know how they feel?
Yeah, I mean, if we're aspiring to do, a lot of people that I work with believe that they have to work super hard, as an example. It's a value, industriousness, or whatever they want to call it.
Right.
And it was something that had been taught to them at an early age, and they never have revisited the value of that, defining it, what it means to be that, and why they believe it's important. And it may have been important 25 years ago in your career, and it may not be as important now. And you just know, you can, if you pay attention to how you feel and just think, okay, why am I beating my head against the wall? And if you don't have a good reason, it might be that you inherited a value from someone else that does not align with what you truly believe. But the momentum of continuing to do something in our minds sometimes wires it to become a law that we must continue to follow, and it's just not the case. But it takes some space to create the opportunity to be aware of whether this is something that we're continuing to do for our own benefit, or because that's just the way it's always been done in our minds.
I love what you just said about the law. So it was just reminding me about the you've been talking about growing up with an experience or a household with high expectations. And so thinking about the law, sometimes when I talk to people, many of the values or the laws they have come from their family of origin, how they were raised, some of those, or the education and the culture. Can you talk a little bit about how you see that early conditioning showing up in adults and how they lead today?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm probably the world's greatest poster child of running with values without question. And I was taught that laziness is a sin above all others. And of course, stealing and lying, all that stuff, yeah, that's a sin too. But being lazy was a sin. And and I never questioned it. And I took it into my career and nearly killed myself. And even 4 or 5 years ago, I was going to the dentist and I was obsessing over a few things that I was working on, and they were contentious and stressful. The dentist said, "Oh, you cracked a tooth, you're grinding your teeth." And they went to give me Novocaine, and they said, "Your blood pressure is so high, we have to call an ambulance to take you to the emergency room." Right? And I'm like, oh. I had not taken the time to check in with myself. And that sounds very indulgent to me, but it's a good example of how we sacrifice our present for something, some ideal. And oftentimes when we get to what we think the ideal is, it's nothing like what we envisioned. And that was my case as well. It's like, okay, sometimes a health scare. I had a massive stroke 12 years ago, and then I went right back to work and worked just as hard as I had before that. And I thought, okay, I have to revisit these things that I'm carrying around like they're a family coat of arms. You know, I can change my mental coat of arms with just a little bit of practice and completely change the way I look at my life. So I think it's huge, especially for those things that are laid down as the law when we're young. And when we get busy, we often just don't create the space to revisit them, and we just keep doing them, and it's a mistake. You don't want to get to the end of your life and realize that, you know, it was all fiction.
I love that. I don't think checking in with yourself is indulgent, and yet I think that most people, and I'll stereotype, I think a higher percentage of men think it is indulgent, think it is silly, think it is woo-woo, think it is all of these things. I will tell you that after I had my kidnapping event and went and did 6 months worth of treatment and really learned, oh, wait, I am suddenly feeling in my gut, you know, this wrenching feeling. I am feeling I had this happen last week. So I am so passionate about commercializing these medical technologies to get to patients. And I work in at academic centers that don't make getting money to the right place easy at all. Like, oh my gosh, absolutely ridiculous. And yesterday I'm trying to kick off this pilot program and just trying to get the finance teams to get aligned and like, seriously, the money's here, but it needs to be here so we can pay these types of things. And by the end of the day, I messaged my associate director and I was like, I can't think about it anymore, because what I'm noticing is I feel like an elephant is sitting on my chest. I feel prickly on my skin. This thing that 6 months from now is going to completely be clear, we're going to figure it out, it's not going to be the end of the world, is causing this body reaction to me. And also, like, I was in a meeting with her and I completely cut her off and snipped at her, which is not my personality at all, right? And I had to say to her, okay, these are the observances that I'm seeing from this stressor. Go back and do a little bit of self-care, a little bit of checking in with myself, and a reevaluating, what does my value look like? My value doesn't look like trying to make this perfect right now. it's trying to collaborate and find a path forward. And that path forward does not have to be today, because also a previous value of mine was like, if it was worth doing, not only did you do it well, but you need to do it right now.
For sure. Yeah, for me, the first question I'd ask is, what role am I playing in making this worse? And then the second question would be sorting out the structure of what that problem is, right? Sometimes, and I agree, it's not indulgent, but especially to men, it feels indulgent.
Right.
It's like you could either work against your emotions and deny they exist and drive with your foot on the gas and the brake, or you could harmonize them with what you want, and they could be the turbo. I mean, it's like taking the foot off the brake. It's a superpower that no one wants to talk about.
Let me jump in.
Please.
Do it.
If you are labeling a particular activity as self-indulgent, that is a label that is a reflection of what your highest value is. If self-indulgent means reflecting on your health, on what we call self-care, and that's not part of, let's say you got work, just work hard, make money. If that's up the top, any reflection to do with your health, you're going to judge as beneath you and devalue it until such times as life gives you a heart attack and you go, maybe I need to prioritize that more. So in order to not judge as the activity as self-indulgent, it would be wise to say, how is reflecting serving that highest value, until you can say with certainty it's a valuable activity to do and it serves my highest value of working hard and making money and providing. It's a perception game. Most people judge something as, in this case, self-indulgent because they see less advantages than advantages. But if you could make it 50-50 and you say actually it's got an equal amount, you'd appreciate the activity and you would fit it into the schedule rather than dismiss it.
And I think part of the problem is how we define our highest value. If your highest value is work, or at least as you see it, which is hard-edged or hard style, health is going to sound frivolous in comparison. But if you redefine work as something a little less one-dimensional and thought of it more as evolution or growth or service, it's easier to slot these other things that are extraordinarily important in, and they're not directly clashing with this concept that we inherited of hard work. You're right, it's just a label, and in most cases it seems to be just a fiction. So why have an internal battle over this when it's completely unnecessary and not fun and harmful to our health and wasteful of our life?
Yeah, you can ask the question, how is the activity of reflection or self-care or whatever the activity that equals self-care, how does doing that serve the highest value? And that's gonna dissolve the charge, the emotional charge of devaluing it, so that you do prioritize it. You go, actually, it's wise to add that into the mix.
Why don't we do this exercise, Dave?
Yeah, please do.
I was going to call you. Why don't we do this exercise? Because you talk about meditation. And I think a lot of people now are starting to realize meditation is a good thing, just like yoga is and just like some of these other things are, right? And yet prioritizing the time to do it is not something a lot of people do. And also a lot of people are really intimidated. They think that in order to do it, they have to do it perfect. So let's use meditation as an example. First off, how did you get into it? And then secondly, how does that feed into one of your highest values that helps you be successful each day?
That's a great question. I got into meditation when I stopped rock and ice climbing. And when I was climbing, because I have somewhat of a fear of heights, I found a place of no thought. And I had never experienced that ever before in my life. And it was absolute bliss. Now, sometimes it was scary, but it was alive. And my senses were heightened, and I wasn't thinking about work or relationships or money or the groceries. I was focused entirely on that one thing while I was doing it. And I'm not recommending go out and take risks, but it showed me that that possibility existed. And when I got to the point where I felt like I had to make a choice between my careers or doing that and doing everything else that I wanted to do, I chose everything else. And I missed that clarity. So I went into the martial arts, and Sam's a martial artist as well. I'm not now. Like I said, I'm stripped down of most of the things that I used to do. That's right. But I knew it was there, right? And that's the thing about meditation. If I didn't know that such a state existed, I would never have committed to doing it. And you're right. Meditation has completely rewired my brain, and it doesn't take forever to bring about a change. And people get intimidated. I'm doing it wrong, or I can't do it. It's like saying I can't sit with myself. And that's actually quite common. And
yeah, so that is common.
Yeah, and if you're like, okay, maybe we call it something else. Maybe we just call it centering ourselves, centering our thoughts before we have to get on an important call for a minute. That's meditative, right? It's a label, and it's a label that I think gets a bad rap. It has been enormously helpful in slowing down the reactive brain between stimulus and response. And because in between those two is where you have the ability to change. So I can't recommend it enough, but I would also, and I'm not a meditation teacher because it's almost, for a number of reasons, but it's funny because it's like, okay, all you have to do is sit there and notice what you're thinking. Try it for a minute. Can't do it wrong. You could fall off your cushion, but you don't even need a cushion. You could do it in a chair. Just give it a shot. Super helpful. And everything good, I think, comes from having the slowing down or the awareness of the thought trains that many of us live our lives on. And when we can get off those thought trains, we suddenly become engaged with our own lives instead of engaged with whatever stimulus comes into our head. Huge, huge game changer.
So what value of yours does participating in that activity feed or align with?
Well, it seems to have threads in all of my values because it's almost like breathing, right? I'm interested in breathing because if I don't, I die. Right. It's something that kind of ties into my mental clarity, which impacts my mental health and my awareness, which then creates the opportunity for a huge amount of gratitude because I'm noticing things that I would have otherwise sped right past. To me, it's almost like it's underlying all of my values. And I don't know that I'd have the ability to be aware of my values if I didn't have some ability to stop the incessant thoughts that our brains naturally produce and will continue to produce for as long as I live. It's not something I'm trying to stop. I'm just trying to be aware of it. And I cannot recommend it enough. And I would say to anyone who's intimidated by it, give it a shot. You can just try an app for 30 days. I'm sure there's free trials. Just say, I'm going to do 2 minutes a day. Just see what happens. Nothing bad will happen.
There is that power in not overthinking things and just doing it. We've talked about, for example, for Nike, the power of their slogan is not in the words do it. The power is in the word just. And by putting just do it, like jump in, don't overthink about it, get out there, try it, experiment. Worst case scenario, you spent 10 minutes and you were miserable or whatnot. But slowly over time, that's not going to be the case. You're going to find, I know that when I've been active in participating in it, I find dialing into what you were just talking about, that reactivity, and I want to talk about conflict resolution, that reactivity component of it, I found that by practicing mindfulness and meditation, one, it helped me become more in tune with my body so that if I was in a meeting and I started feeling this reaction to a conflict, I knew what was happening and I could pause and think about it and then dig in a very healthy way. Versus before learning some of those skills, my reactivity would be so fast that I wouldn't be as thoughtful. I definitely would not be driving conflict to cohesion. It would definitely be a disaster. And it does. It ties into that. Sam, you look like you're dying to say something.
There is an incredible book from the Hindu cosmology called the Bhagavad Gita, which is a several thousand-year-old book of which is popular in the Indian culture. And if I could nail it down to one message, it says, let go of the outcome of, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Let go of the outcome. Just do the work. So that's a nice balance between working hard and trying to get the fruits and manage the mind, which is actually managing your blood pressure at the same time. So I find, I'll give you a perfect example. My sweetheart and I were living in Australia back in February this year, waiting for our visa for the US to come through. And we were a bit frustrated because we're like, when is it coming? When is it coming? And I said, we should practice or make a decision to let go of the outcome, which is getting the visa, and just let it happen. And that way we were able to manage our state in the face of the fact that you couldn't really do anything, you just have to wait. So meditation for me is actually letting go of the outcome of trying to do anything with meditation. One thing you could do is just sit down, close your eyes, and listen to the sound of breath or air going in and out of your nose, and just listen to it for 20 breaths in a row. That will put you into a state and you'll go, I like this. Another thing that my sweetheart and I do is we go into Spotify on our phone, just go before going to bed and look up 20-minute spoken word guided meditations. And when someone else is talking in that soft, gentle voice, and there's tons of them out there,
Yep.
it takes the attention off the voice and the thoughts. It helps you switch off from the day. It just need that little, leg up to give you the feeling or the fix of like, hey, this meditation is giving me instant result, which is lower blood pressure, and it quietens this, and rest, which I think everybody can appreciate. They go, I wish I could have a bit more of that. Just do it for 10, 20 breaths in a row, or just listen to the sounds. You have to go from the chatting in here to something else. So that's a very simple, accessible way. And go back to the basics. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Okay, so listeners, we are going to talk about conflict resolution, but first, you reminded me, I want to talk about the overthinking a little more. I want to dig into, peel the onion perhaps a little bit more. So for those leaders who hesitate, over prepare, struggle to actually act boldly because they get caught in that internal thoughts or fear of failure or all of these things, how do you find, one, the balance between humility and a decisive action, and the ability for individuals who really struggle with that to actually act and make progress forward?
Yeah, I think the awareness of listening to your internal negotiations is invaluable. With us talking ourselves out of action or talking ourselves out of starting something, don't even get to the point of worrying about the outcome because we never start because we're too busy negotiating internally as to whether we should do it or not. And all of us do this, I think, to some degree. And it's not always easy to see when we're gaining more information to make a better decision or we're gaining information to avoid a decision. And for me, the question is, what more information could I find that would allow me to make a better decision? And when I realize that I'm really just hedging, I'm delaying action because I don't have a crystal ball, there's nothing more that I can do. I just have to make the decision. And I think often we don't see it that way because we're too busy trying to gather and accumulate information to see into the future, right? But a lot of times we get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not likely to get any new information that is helpful. So I'm going to have to make the best decision I can with the information I have. And it's going to have to play itself out. And that's just the human condition, right? So I think that pause to say, okay, I'm just gathering information to avoid admitting that I don't have the ability to see into the future. And you're like, okay, well, let's make the decision. To me, that's a trap I think many smart people fall into. Sam, you probably have a different perspective.
I just finished reading a book called The Transcendent Function by Jeffrey C. Miller. The transcendent function is a concept that Carl Jung came up with, and he used it in clinical trials, helping people to navigate conflict within themselves. And the idea is that we live in a world of opposites. Should I go that way or should I go that way? And if you've got a decision to make and you're doubting yourself, yes, you can check in with your values and say, well, that's my values, but I'm still doubting myself. Jung would say you hold both options in your mind and sit with the tension. And then a third state or attitude or perspective will spontaneously come to mind. We call that intuition. A lot of leaders talk about being guided by their intuition. It's not a mystical state. It's a factual state that can happen. If you're a creative professional, you know that goofing off or doing some other task sometimes is when the best answer comes. When you're at the basin doing the dishes, or you're in the bathroom and you're singing your favorite song, or you're at the bar with a drink in your hand. It's when you are not trying that the solution can pop into your head. So rather than force the issue, you say, well, I know the options I've got, and I've calculated both, and I still don't know what to do, and I've checked in with what's valuable to me and the people that I'm responsible for and the clients that I want to serve, and I still want certainty of my choice. That's a leader who can sit with the tension of opposites long enough. Of course, you've sometimes got a deadline, but if you sit with it, if you sleep on it, if you've got the opportunity, the luxury to do that, sit with the two opposites, forget about it, and then train that muscle, the transcendent function of the unconscious mind dialoguing with your conscious mind, and you will get an idea that will be not a either or, and it will be a neither nor. That's a new paradigm of thinking. That's not compromise or trying to do a bit of both, and it's not collapsing and saying, I've got to do that one, forget that, but it's transcending polarity and coming up with something totally fresh, and you go, holy smoke, how did I come up with that? That's perfect. So you've got to trust that aspect of you. And this book, Transcendent Function, is saying therapists need to take that concept out into the world for cultural and social situations that we are currently facing. We all know the one that happened this week, and the stuff that's going down in the world. If you're a leader and you're faced with which way do we go, I highly recommend you practice dialoguing with your unconscious mind, because it is a vast storehouse of wisdom that is untapped. Because we're too rational. There's a kind of prejudice on rational thinking. A leader, and there's many of them in the world, they value their intuition. They value the unconscious mind to produce a metaphor, a symbol that is not either or, it's neither nor. And it pops you into a new paradigm of thinking, which I think is what is most needed in the world right now.
So one of the things I'm obsessed with conflict resolution. I'm working and doing a lot of research. I want to write a book on conflict resolution. Why? Because I want more people in the world to actually love conflict resolution instead of running away from it. And I think one of the things, Sam, you're talking about is very much dealing with that internal conflict resolution and getting to a piece of what decisions you would make. Now, when you guys are working with teams or individuals, how do you manage conflict resolution, especially in and especially, come on, Dave, you're a lawyer, right? In high stakes.
It never happens in this.
Well, the first thing
once or twice, right?
Well, for years I was lamenting the fact that people would be like this. And I took a cue from my brother, who's a plumber. He never resented the client for breaking or plugging a drain. It was just something to deal with. And once I got out of the hand-wringing of why are people like this and realized that's what I'm actually paid to do, it became a lot easier. But I think that a lot of the conflict that I see in my day is based on a lack of information distribution, right? The leader, let's say, has the context, the history, the facts, and the person that they may be talking to does not. And they hear about a change, and everyone makes their own beliefs based on imperfect information, and they get very worked up. And by the time the conversation is had, there's such a disparity in information that leaders often shortcut the process by trying to deliver the facts from a very logical perspective because the emotion has gone from it because they've lived with it, whereas the people they're talking to have not. And a person who's in a heightened emotional state is not immediately ready for a fact-based conversation. Until we offload some of that emotional content, it's very difficult to resolve the conflict because usually, to me, the conflict resolution is exchange of information so that now that is, in equilibrium. But rushing that because of a higher level of context and facts is almost always a mistake. And the other mistake, I think, is expecting that when we tell people what we think the facts are, they're just going to capitulate and say, oh, I was completely wrong. People, I think, are...
That happens all the time for me. That doesn't happen for you guys? Jeez, I'm confused.
Grace and space. I always want to give a side door for people to sneak out with their dignity intact so they can take the facts that we've provided, think about it, and then we can cool off. And then, we don't always have the luxury of having that amount of time, but just to recognize that, people's pride and dignity can be compromised or trodden upon unnecessarily. And then it doesn't matter what the facts are, right? And if we can get back to exchanging information from a rational plane, I think we have a much better ability to reduce conflict. But not recognizing the disparity in context and information and emotional states, I think, is just a huge barrier to communicating with anyone.
Can I share
saw an example? Yeah, I saw an example of this past week. One of my dear friends was in the middle of about to go through a divorce, and his wife had served him on one day, and because he's going back and forth between where we live and where she lives, and then it was a couple of days between that, right? And then when he walks into the house, he could see from her body language, like she was terrified how he was going to respond. And he, because he's really been doing a lot of therapy, he's been doing EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. He's been doing all of these things on himself. When he went in, instead of going in with, a hostile attitude, he did exactly that. He did that. I've never heard that, grace or space, but he did that, and it completely revolutionized the conversation. They completely sat down and wrote down their new guidelines for their relationship and it gave her the opportunity to say, wow, you've really grown. And instead of having that hostile, and I was just listening to the story and hearing it, I was just like, this is the best example of someone working on themselves, a human being, working on their reactivity, and also entering into what is initially a hostile situation with that grace and space and the impact it can have immediately on the other person. So they let down their guard. They're able to speak a little bit more freely. They're able to become curious, like, how are you reacting so calmly and so kindly in the situation to drive towards that collaboration. Okay, Sam, I want to hear what you had to say.
Dave and I got a presentation called Composure Through Conflict, how to stop taking things so personally. And we gave a presentation back in last year to a group of managers, and they loved it. We're doing it for the first time live in San Diego in January to a group of lawyers at a seminar down there. Now, there's three things that we talk about in our presentation. We basically say the easy, the middle, and the more challenging practical thing that people can do to stop taking things so personally, which solves conflict resolution. We've already talked about, the basics of breathing, meditation, diet, sleep. That's the easy one. The second one we've talked about is an understanding of how the brain works. And we've talked a little bit about this, like people can be really emotional, even though we're saying, how come you can't just, think rationally? And people go, oh, I didn't see it that way. And then they, come to your side of things. I think it was Max Planck, German physicist. He said, you can't expect to just show people a theory and evidence and for them to go, oh, wow, I see the light. He says, no, you actually have to wait for an entire generation to die before the next generation grows up agreeing with your theory and going, oh, how natural. So you're dealing with, when it comes to brain chemistry, people have subjective bias confirmation, and they are right in the face of what you call facts, logics, and reason. So that's the second thing we talk about, is decoding how the brain works. The third thing is called reflective awareness. And this is based on the works of Dr. John Demartini. Reflective awareness is where everyone in the world who pisses you off is a mirror of some aspect of you that you have yet to own and appreciate and love within yourself. So this changes the thing around from how do I change the external world and other people as a way, a strategy for conflict resolution, and turns it back to how can I control me and have an effect that way. Rather than letting life happen to me, how can I let me happen to life? So let's give an example here. You've got someone that you're working with and we quote unquote call them hostile. You got to get past the label. You got to get past your interpretation of the facts and say, what specific trait, action, or inaction am I perceiving them to demonstrate or display, and where and when precisely have I demonstrated the same or similar to the same degree qualitatively and quantitatively, and you've got to audit your life so you take them out of the pit because you're resenting them and your pride's up here, and you look for where you do the same or similar, and you use your heart and your mind as the judge, and you bring them out of the pit, and you bring yourself off the pedestal, and you see eye to eye and say, wow, that person was sent into my life to appreciate a part of me that I'd been either a little bit puffy and prideful about, or guilty and shameful of doing the same or similar to people I care about in my life. That way, rather than saying F you to that person, you say thank you. And that's what reflective awareness is seeing the world is a mirror to help you come back to equilibrium, which is what Dave was saying before. That's your authentic self, where you can appreciate the people in your life for who they are and yourself. See, most people want to be loved and appreciated for who they are, but really only half of themselves, the parts that they like about themselves. Nobody wants to be loved and appreciated for the parts that they don't like about themselves. So right. In order to love and appreciate those parts of yourself that you're guilty and shameful for, you take these people who are hostile, you look for where you own it, where do you do the same or similar to the same degree, same amount of times, to the same intensity, until you can say with certainty that you can see an equal amount you'll enter a state of grace, appreciation, and you'll just know it. It will dissolve the emotional charge, and you'll have a different appreciation for the person on the other end. That's how you resolve conflict.
I love it. I love it. And it's so worth it. Like, the hard work to do these things is so worth it, because the outcome, from my perspective, is I'm a happier individual. Actually, some of the people I've had conflict with are some of my closest allies and friends now, right? You build deeper relationships, deeper understanding of humanity for what it is, better, the ability to be a better human being when leading and collaborating with others, because you're learning these lifelong lessons. I just think there's so much value. Okay, a couple of things, and then we're going to get to our rapid five. One, I want both of you briefly to tell the listeners why they should read your book. And Dave, kick us off first.
Oh, mine's written mainly for people in the HOA world, but it's about how to deal with people without having to use force, right? And most people respond to conflict with conflict. And when it's bone on bone, verbal sparring, both sides get hurt. And there's an easier way, a less, and I want to use the word softer way, to talk to people who are perceived as hostile without getting in the way of the bullet, without putting yourself at risk. And usually, if we respond this way, we remove the conflict. But most people are not trained to step out of the path of the force. We are trained to fight, and we, as a society, I don't think we can continue to do that. Someone has to shake hands, and if both of us have clenched fists, the handshake's never going to happen. Someone has to release their fist first, and I say it's us.
I love it. And I should have said what the name of the book is for those that are just listening and watching. But Meeting Martial Arts: The Hard and Soft Approaches to Handling Contentious Meetings. And now Sam, who is known as Self Worth Sam, which I absolutely love. I need Sam's voice in the back of my head, I think, constantly for when I try to get so many snippets of wisdom. Oh my gosh. Okay. So in Sam's book is How to Beat Imposter Syndrome and Be Confident, the ultimate 30-day challenge. Tell us more, Sam.
It's 30 days, 30 tips, 30 mini challenges, 30 different ways to dissolve imposter syndrome and recognize the authentic self. The book originally was, or it still is, an online course that I recorded many years ago, and I then uploaded all of the videos to YouTube. This is well before ChatGPT, transcribed it and turned it into a book. So I didn't write the book, I spoke it. And I wrote it at a time when I went through imposter syndrome for the second time. I thought I'd dissolved it. And then I thought, I'm going to write a book about imposter syndrome. So I started looking at the experts online who had PhD after their name and doctor at the beginning. And my gut went, and I felt like an imposter and a fake, because I immediately exaggerated the fantasy I had around these so-called experts. And then I went, hang on a second, that some people want the academic expert. Some people want the person who's not, who can relate in a different way. And so I'd learned and trained the muscle in me to dissolve the fantasy and come back to who I was, my core competency. And so you could have 30 tips, there's quizzes in there, there's challenges. It's a very practical book with a few, like there's some case studies on neuroscience, there's some mythological stories, there's different things to appeal to a range of learners, because I understand, as being a school teacher, everyone learns differently. Everyone comes to it from a different way. So I thought every chapter is going to tick the box of how different people like to learn. So you get 30 days, 30 strategies, if you like, to dissolve imposter syndrome and reclaim the authentic self.
Love it. Love it. Okay, rapid fire and then motivational quotes. Let's do rapid fire. Are you guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Always. Okay, Dave, first, what does leaving a legacy mean to you?
I don't even think in those terms, ironically. To me,
It means nothing, Angela. Why would you
no,
ask me that question?
I'm, I had a couple death scares in my life, and I recognize how fleeting life is. And my goal right now is to savor as many moments of the time I have left on this planet, because then the legacy will take care of itself. And when I think about a legacy, it takes me out of the mindset of appreciating the present moment. And I'm really working hard on just savoring every minute that I can, which I haven't done for most of my career. Obviously family, celebrated my 25th wedding anniversary, kids are in good shape. I won't remember on my deathbed all of the days I spent at the office. I saw my father go through that on his deathbed. But I also believe that working and contributing and growing and helping others, that's the legacy that I want to live. But I also want to have the assurance that I haven't wasted the time that I have once I was aware of how precious it is.
Love it. Sam?
I would like to be an example to other people of someone who mastered presence with themselves.
Love it. Okay, Sam, you're first on Rapid Fire 2. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Appreciate money and what it can do for you and others.
Alrighty, Dave?
If you don't have the time to do it well now, when will you find the time to do it correctly later?
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, a book, film, or mentor, Dave, who changed the way you see leadership?
I think it was my dad. Very focused on the ground level stuff when he had to be, and able to transition out of that when he needed to. There've been a number of interesting people, but most of the people that I think of have been more unsung than people that others would regard as leaders or thought leaders or famous people. People doing quietly brave work day in and day out, live miraculous lives.
So true. Sam?
My mentor, Dr. John DeMartini. This guy has had a profound influence on the direction of my life, spiritually, financially, business, relationships, health, and I highly recommend people to check out his works. It's all about values and the authentic self, and it's truly inspiring
And life-changing from what I hear from you.
Yeah.
Okay. Sam, biggest misconception people have about leadership?
Doesn't matter what experience you have, it doesn't matter what age you are, your sex, your gender, religion, anything. A leader is when you decide to become one. From that first day, I mean, if not now, when? So you say, okay, today I'm identifying as a leader. I'm going to lead my life in alignment with my highest values, and be certain that others will see that and go, I want the same for me.
I think the difference between talking it and walking it, I don't think there can be any daylight between the two. And I think that there's kind of a subculture of people who use the word completely out of context, not understanding what it means. And it's unfortunate because it devalues the people who truly are walking it, because they're too busy walking it to talk it quite so much.
Yeah, that's deep. Okay, now this wouldn't be Badass Leaders podcast if we didn't ask the question from both of you. What do you think makes a badass leader?
I think you need
Sam.
I think you need cool clothes.
Absolutely.
I think buy the really cool clothes, the really good shirts, spend the money on yourself, look cool while you're doing what you're doing. It'll make you feel great. And cool shoes. And, in addition to work life, you got to play. What's fun and adventurous for you? What renews your spirit? Aside of all the work, you got to have that renewing activity or quality in your life, however you want to express it. I say clothes, but that's something tangible, palatable. Get a tattoo. Do something that's cool for you.
Love it.
Badass leaders swim through the gray zone, right? A lot of people think making decisions, especially after the fact, were 90% certain. The reality is a lot of these decisions are far from certain, and they still have to be made. And not making a decision is obviously making a decision. And to recognize that, there are going to be things that go wrong and still make the decisions and still keep showing up it takes courage and resilience, because things are not going to go right. And you just can't take all of the risk and all of the uncertainty out of life or business. It's impossible.
Okay, now my personal favorite part of the podcast is asking everyone what their favorite motivational quote is. I love mantras. They have kept me going and thriving and helped me be the resilient person that I am. So, Dave, why don't you kick us off? What is your favorite motivational quote?
Oh, it is in keeping with the present moment and the enjoyment of every bit of life. It's Naval Ravikant who said something to the effect of, I don't have a preconceived notion of what the perfect day is because it would ruin the day that I'm currently living.
I just got chills. That is so good. Okay, Sam.
The magnificence of who you are is far greater than any fantasy you may impose upon yourself.
I love it.
Awesome.
You guys are absolutely amazing. Will you tell the listeners how they can find you both, and how, for the teams that are now thinking I need for them to come and do, especially this conflict workshop, how do they find you? How do they connect with you?
We like people to launch flares into the air. Bat signs, that's good. Dave, you go first.
David at liferaftcoaching.com or liferaftcoaching.com. And there's a story behind the name, but that's what it is.
Alrighty, and Sam?
My website is selfworthsam.com. I'm now calling myself the neurosurgeon of self-worth, but I've still kept the domain of selfworthsam.com. Over, there's YouTube, there's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And
some beatboxing.
There's some beatboxing videos there for sure. Yeah.
Impressive.
Well, we have it on this podcast. What was that, Dave?
I said it's impressive. He's quite a beatboxer.
Okay, so listeners, do not forget, we do put the links and the websites and everything in the show notes, as well as the links to purchase both of the books. And also, I'm sure we have it, Sam, the link to the online course. I know I've looked at it, so yes, we have
it's
that.
on my
We will
website.
put that.
There's like a drop down for courses.
Yep. We'll put that in the show notes. Make sure you connect with these two amazing men. This has been so much fun. I am so grateful. You both absolutely put a lot of badass into this podcast, and it brought so much joy to my Sunday. I know there are a lot of other things you could have done with this time, so thank you for saying yes to us today.
Angela, you are
Honor
awesome.
to be a guest here. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast. To hear more interviews with industry experts and learn how to grow your career and leadership potential, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. This podcast is a production of the AGN Group. To learn more about the AGN Group, visit our website at theagnGroup.com. There, you can discover more about our services, which include hosting workshops, management consulting, brand strategy, keynote speaking, and more. Follow us on all social media channels shown on the screen and displayed in the show notes. And until next week, be brave and be badass.